You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Finish Strong Friday. It's not a Winners Friday because I forgot to pick winners. We'll do that next week. It is, though, a Picks Friday as well. Ross Tucker, it's nice to be in person with my guy, producer Jack here, live from the Super Bowl. Very, very cool. We got more guests today, Jack. We got Moro Ojomo. Remember that name? I would not be surprised if he had a big sack or pressure against Caliendo in this game. He's a D tackle that plays about 20 snaps for the Eagles. He's been doing some good things. And I really like some of the other conversations. Joe Cullen, the defensive line coach, speaking of defensive linemen for the Chiefs, I think you guys are going to love that chat. And then there are some injury issues that we need to be aware of in this game. Cam Jurgens and Jalen Hurts and Landon Dickerson. So we'll have Dr. Chao from Pro Football Doc, Sports Injury Central as well. All those guys are part of the big show, which is presented by Labatt Blue Light. Absolutely delicious beer. I'm a huge fan. Drink some Labatt Blue Lights with your friends. Live life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York.
The Big Show.
All right, Dr. Chao, my guy from SportsInjuryCentral.com, SixScore.com. I reference it a lot, especially on the Even Money podcast, but at times here on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Not going to be a long conversation. We'll do that for the offseason. What I want to know, though, is some Super Bowl injuries, okay? I think, is it all Eagles related? I mean,
Mostly.
Jurgens, Dickerson, Graham, Hurts. You tell me, is there a Chiefs injury situation that I'm forgetting?
Well, depends on your perspective. That injury situation would be Sky Moore. Is he going to be activated?
Yeah, no, that doesn't count.
All right. Isaiah Pacheco, is he really healthy?
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, I mean, a broken fibula is a hard thing for a running back, right? And I think he struggled a little bit, as much for the ankle and the fibula as perhaps the offensive line, which seems to have turned a corner, at least against the Bills recently. But you're right. But in general, Ross, for Super Bowls, usually teams are pretty healthy. Because if you believe what we do at Sports Injury Central, we tell you who's better against the spread potentially based on injuries. As the injured teams get knocked off along the way, the cream rises to the top. So typically, the Super Bowls are not that injured. This one is a little bit of an exception, and you're right. They're all on the Eagles side.
Yeah, let's dive into it. So I've seen two things. And now, just so for the record, Dr. Chao and I are talking on Tuesday at noon. This will air on either Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday's Ross Tucker Football Podcast, doing a bunch of interviews here from Radio Row. But let's start with the Eagles' Brandon Graham. Now, I think I read SixScore.com, I don't want to put words in your mouth, where you seemed skeptical and you thought it was unlikely he plays. I've also seen video where he's out there flying around and throwing that arm around. So as of Tuesday at 12 or 11:28 Central Time, what are you thinking as it relates to Brandon Graham, the Eagles? I think it's his 16th year edge rusher.
Well, so here's my chance to look really bad or really good, depending on what happens here. And obviously, you guys have good editors, so you'll make me look good.
No, we're going to play what you say.
I'm just joking here. Okay, let me ask you this question. As an offensive lineman, how would you relish playing against a defensive lineman who can't push off or hold you away with a bench press?
Is it his left tricep, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, so then if he's over the right tackle, that's his outside hand. It's a problem either way.
What would you think about that?
I would think let's run it right at him.
I'm just saying, I'm not doubting Brandon Graham. Great player, 16 years. There's no reason for the practice window not to open. Who cares? It's a terminal at this point of the season. You're not wasting anything. It's either now or never. He heard it in late November. So he's barely 2-3 months window kind of out from that. Late November, late December, January. Look, he can't do 100 push-ups right now, much less max bench press or be explosive. Flying around, yeah, that's his legs. Swatting this way, yeah, that's biceps. Holding an offensive lineman off, I think difficult. I hope he plays. I hope for his career's sake he can walk off with a Super Bowl win. I'm not being a hater, but you have to admit that as an offensive lineman, if you knew that and you were playing against that guy, you'd say that's a point of attack that we can attack.
What about as just a situational rusher so that it's unlikely he has to hold off for a running play? He's a situational rusher that he's only in on 3rd and long.
Well, that comes to roster management, right? I mean, where do you have the spare spaces? Because of potentially you may not with offensive line question marks. You might need to dress an extra offensive lineman, right? And we'll get to that with the Eagles. That's a roster management situation. I can say this. I hope he can play. There's no way he'll be anything close to 100%. Could he be somewhat situational? Maybe. But even then, I think roster spots are so precious. It would be difficult, but I'd love to see it.
Let's get to a couple of offensive linemen for the Eagles. I've seen you kind of getting me a little bit worried about Landon Dickerson a little bit, but I thought he wasn't even on the injury report last week.
Well, look, I am not hating on the Philadelphia Eagles or any NFL team, but you and I both know that there are a lot more injuries in the locker room, in the training room, than would show up on the injury report, right?
Fact.
So you don't have 5 athletic trainers and 3 doctors traveling for the 2 people that might be on an injury report. So I'm not saying anyone's doing anything wrong or nefarious there. But we'll talk about Jurgens or talk about Dickerson. But with Dickerson, you watch film. I try to go back and watch him. I will admit, during the game, I did not notice a particular play or anything where he injured his left knee. But I went back and looked at the all 22 and all the film. How do you think he played all game from the get?
He didn't play all game. He only played the first half.
No. From the start of the game, how did Landon Dickerson play?
I don't know. I didn't go back and watch it either.
Okay.
I was on the sideline.
Oh.
You tell me.
Well, maybe you had a better vantage point, Ross. You're supposed to see that on the sideline.
He was at a different position, though, too.
Yes.
Which should be noted. And I can't remember when I started to notice that he was limping and not moving well.
I went back and looked at film just for that. On the very first play, the Saquon 60-some-yard touchdown, he looks like he favors his knee a little bit. It starts to get much worse later in the first quarter. By the early second quarter, it's looking pretty bad. And then he puts a brace on, and he's still limping around, and even gets a key holding call because he can't get out to his right against Bobby Wagner. And the second half in comes Cam Jurgens. So it looked to me, the good news is, look, he's had ACLs on both knees. No one's saying this is an ACL. Is it related meniscus? Who knows? The bottom line is it's something that he, I think, started the game with that got a little bit worse. And yes, I get the healing powers of the Super Bowl and the extra week, but that's my biggest question mark, Landon Dickerson. Now, unusual, we got injury reports last week, but then again, everyone was just DNP, walk through the Eagles. This Wednesday, tomorrow, not today, we'll find out the first injury report, and we'll get our first glance. But I'm more worried than most on him.
All right, what about Jurgens with the back?
Well, Jurgens, I think the Eagles played it very smartly by activating him and not starting him, and they needed him, right? I mean, You know the Eagles.
That's rare.
That's
rare nowadays for a starter to not start but not be inactive, to be there in emergency, and then he had to go in.
And you could comment on this better than I can because I don't know roster construction and depth charts, especially not Eagles offensive linemen like you would. What that says to me is they don't have a lot of depth on their offensive line, and they really needed Jurgens just in case. That would speak to me. They don't have a lot of interior depth on their offensive line.
Right.
And so they just had to have him, and that's why it's the unusual situation. And he gutted through it. Now, I'm more optimistic, unless he's got a disc issue that we don't know about, that with the 2 weeks of in between that game and this game, I'm more optimistic about Cam Jurgens than Landon Dickerson. But I hope we see both of them.
Hurts.
Hurts is still hurt on his knee. There's no question he played, and he played through, which is our expectation all along.
Looked pretty good running to me. I mean, he ran pretty effectively.
For what we were expecting, yes, but he wasn't 100%. I mean, look at his carries and yardage, and he wasn't as dynamic. Straight ahead, good, but wiggle and dynamic, maybe not quite as much. But once again, he's playing. He's going to be able to run the ball. Will they have as many designed run RPO things? That's a scheme question and one to ask Cullen more.
Check him out on social media at ProFootballDoc as well as SixScore.com, Sports Injury Central. Thank you for the Super Bowl injury update. Needed that.
No problem.
All right. So if you've been paying attention, this guy next to me has been balling out this year. I've been loving every second of it. Moro Ojomo, unbelievable job, man. Unbelievable. Like the reps you've been getting, your one-on-one pass rush. I've been so impressed. What's been clicking for you?
I think it's the people around me. You know, guys like Jalen Carter, guys like Clint Hurd, guys in the building. The Eagles have a phenomenal organization. You know, that's why we've been here in, 2 and 3 years, right? And, you know, they've helped me develop, and it's been really cool. Just want to keep taking steps forward.
So I'm blanking right now whether this is your rookie or second year.
It's my second year.
Second, okay. But last year you were inactive a lot, didn't play much, right?
Yeah, I didn't play.
Okay, because I remember, because I do the preseason games on TV for you guys.
Yeah.
You started to show it in the preseason.
Yeah.
Like you were starting to get out of it. I was like, oh, they might have something in him.
Thank you.
But last year, and at Texas, you weren't known as much of a pass rusher, right?
Yeah.
What is there certain things that guys have taught you or the D-line coaches have taught you that have helped you so much?
Yeah, I'm just learning, you know. When I was going through the draft, I learned so much more about pass rush than I'd ever known. And, you know, I'm just developing. And I think a lot of guys have this misconstrued thought that you're developed by the time you get to the NFL, but I don't think that's the truth. I think that you continue to develop and you continue to sharpen your tools.
I don't think there's any question about it. And guys get better and worse. And I was much better my second year than my first year. Do you feel like you have a pretty good plan for the guards and center for the Chiefs?
You know, I think we go through it as a staff. We go through it as with our coaches, and yeah, you know, we're excited for this matchup.
In particular, what do you see from Caliendo, the left guard, a guy that you might get a bunch of one-on-ones against?
You know, the guy's tough. The guy plays really hard, and just excited to get an opportunity against him.
What do you see from Tooney at left tackle? I've been impressed by that. I know you don't watch him that much, but still. Him going out there and being able to play the way he has.
I mean, to do what he's done for this team, you know, Pro Bowl type caliber player and just an amazing football player. And, you know, it's a really great opportunity for us to go versus this offensive line.
What is the key when you beat your guy and get in the backfield? When you're going to try to take Mahomes down, what's the key at that point?
I think that bring your feet. Bring your feet. I think people dive too early before you're close enough to make the tackle.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Good luck. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, finally we got a position coach, Joe Cullen, and he's been a coordinator, done a terrific job. Okay, I got to tell you a story. Today, I was talking with Seth Payne, okay? And Seth Payne, Gerald McCoy, okay? And Gerald McCoy gave you credit, a lot of credit, for the success in his career. He brought up your name unprompted. I didn't remember you guys being together.
I tell you, Gerald, I was in Tampa Bay for 2 years with Lovie Smith when Lovie got the job, and Gerald was awesome. Gerald was a good player before I got there, let me just say that. But I tell you, he soaked everything in. He was a Warren Sapp. He idolized Sapp. Sapp used to come over. But Gerald was a guy that really worked at his craft. And in about a 5-year stretch, I don't think there was a better defensive tackle in the league.
He had a really good run. You've done an awesome job with your group, man. You really have. I think at times you guys almost go under the radar, not just the D-line, but really the whole defense. I think when you have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid, other guys won't get as much credit, but the way George is playing, obviously the way Chris is playing, other guys as well, you have to be pretty proud of what those guys have done this year.
No, I tell you, it's a great group, and when you say that about under the radar, I know I've gotten to know Coach Saban, and he said the same thing. He said, "No, your defense has really played well." And all the credit. We got a great group of guys, led by Coach Spagnuolo. Spags does a phenomenal job, as good a job as anyone I've ever been around. He's legendary, and he really empowers the group, the players and assistant coaches, to be the best that they can be. And we have a group that doesn't care who gets the credit, and they come to work every day. And we got stars. We got some really good players. You mentioned Chris, Nick Bolton's, Trent McDuffie's at each level. But then there's a lot of guys that just come to work. The Mike Danas, the Turk Whartons, George you mentioned, Drew Tranquil. We have a great group.
So you mentioned two guys that nobody ever talks about, but every time I watch Dana and Wharton, those guys are making plays. I mean, and maybe you guys like that they're under the radar because they don't make as much money or whatever, but those guys are good. Those guys can play.
I tell you, those two guys right there, when I first got it, they were playing in a great role, and it was like you'd love to have a Mike Dana in every room or Turk Wharton, and they just continue to develop, work at the craft, and they love football.
So why do you think a guy like Spags hasn't gotten head coaching interviews? Because to me it's crap. Like if Pete Carroll can get interviewed, why wouldn't Spags at least, if Pete Carroll can get hired, why isn't a guy like Spags to get some more interviews with him? He went to St. Louis and they didn't have a quarter, they had issues there.
Well, I think, when you talk about defensive coordinators in this league, Spags is a Hall of Famer, legendary.
Yeah.
What he's done, he's the only coordinator to win multiple Super Bowls with different teams.
Oh, that's a great point.
Or Super Bowl with the Giants, but then multiple with Kansas City. No one's ever done that. He's had some interviews, but, the one thing about Spags, he's a great leader, and I'm shocked he hasn't been labeled or a guy that someone's tried to take to be a head coach.
It's crazy. Schematically, what does he do that impresses you?
He's always one step ahead. I worked for Coach Harbaugh, Coach Marinelli. They used to always have the saying, you guys are a step behind, right? But Spags is always a step ahead. He's innovative. He's constantly changing things, putting players into positions to succeed. They may have the same job, but from a different alignment, disguising coverages, and he's always given the offense a different look than they received the series before.
So I played for 5 teams, been around a lot of big dudes, okay? I do the Eagles preseason games and do some other stuff for them. Those guys are monsters, bro.
Their offensive line.
Unbelievable. Like, Mailata's 6'8", 380. Landon has to weigh 355, 360. Becton's 360. Lane Johnson's 335 with rippled ab muscles.
He's the light one of the bunch.
Okay, tell me if you think this is crazy. I think that you can make an argument they're the most physically gifted offensive line of all time. So I'm just talking, I'm not saying they're the best O-line, but if you talk height, weight, speed, athleticism ratio, and you add that, I can't think, because even Jurgens is like a Jason Kelsey freak show. He played tight end in Nebraska for 2 years.
He's a great athlete.
Yeah. So do you think that you think that an argument can be made that they're up there among the most physically gifted offensive lines we've seen?
In my 18 years in the NFL, absolutely. And I remember as a youngster in high school, the Hogs over there, the Redskins, but absolutely. The lines of the great Dallas teams. There's no question about it. They're physically gifted. Jeff Stoutland does a great job as anybody with that group, pushes them to be the best. When I was in Baltimore, we practiced against them, so saw those guys hand in hand. They do a great job. Jeff does coaching them, but they're big and they block out the sun.
So I did the Texans game. I can't remember if we talked before the game. I did the Texans game on the radio. And at one point, you slid Chris over, the right tackle, the rookie right tackle from Notre Dame, beat him for a big sack. Talk to me, how much freedom do you give your guys? How much of it is you saying, hey, I want you to go over him? How does that work in your room?
Well, like with Coach Spags, he'll have certain calls where, we'll do matchups, and like Chris will have the ability to match up who we decide during the week, and that all comes from Spags with the call. And then there'll be times we want him on a guard, times we might want him on a center, or hey, get out to tackle. There's no chip, there's no slide that's going to hurt you. Go out there. And so those are some of the things that we'll do. Most of it's by call. It's not just like, hey, go freelance and do what you want. And then Coach Spags will have certain calls within the scheme where Chris is allowed to do that.
I like, though, having different body types sometimes that like the right tackle for the Texans, Blake Fisher. He hasn't gone up against a body type like that. It's just a different animal. He doesn't practice. What does Chris weigh? 320? Like, he doesn't go against that.
No, and then when you look at Chris, he's also the unique thing about Chris. It's one thing to put a big guy out there, but he has the skill set to beat you like an end.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, am I sitting on the power and he blows by you, or am I sitting on the speed and he runs right through you?
And he's long too,
he's
isn't
long.
he?
Yeah, he's long. Whereas like George is great at power, but George is 265. Chris goes out there, he's like you said, 310, 315.
You guys really, with all these guys, with Kelsey, Mahomes, Jones, they really do seem like team guys and unselfish. There's something to that.
No, I tell you, they really are. It's all about the team, and I think that just starts right at the top with Coach Reed. And I've been impressed. This is my third year when I walked in the door, how hard Kelsey works at practice, how hard Mahomes works at practice. Chris Jones and the so-called stars of the team really work as hard as anybody. But then they're helping young guys out. They're pushing the guys. It's a great thing.
I'm not just saying this because you're on, but I say it all the time on my show. The biggest thing that fans and media don't know about the NFL is how important position coaches are. I had 9 O-line coaches. There's a big difference. I mean, you guys make the difference, in my opinion, between wins and losses. I don't think people recognize that. They only ever talk about the head coach, maybe the coordinators. Position coaches make a big-ass difference, man, and I just want you to know that. I know you know that, but here, I have a player tell you that.
No, and coming from you, Ross, obviously that means a lot, and you're right. And we have a great staff. I mean, our defensive staff, our offensive staff, each position coach is just a phenomenal coach in person, and they care about their players. The ones that care about you can push you. And it might not be good, but I learned that a long time ago.
Joe, great seeing you. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Ross.
Jack, I told you this was going to happen, but I'm looking at the tickets on the Game Time app. You can now get into the Super Bowl for $2,500. And some of these tickets, the face value is like $2,250. I mean, this is what happens when the Chiefs play in the Super Bowl every year and the Eagles are back for the second time in 3 years. You can get some really good deals. This is about as good of a Super Bowl ticket price as you're ever going to get in terms of it being affordable. The only place to go ahead and get tickets, not only for this game, but any game, it is the Game Time app. They've got the all-in pricing, the seat views, the panoramic view from your seat, which is incredible. Obviously, the lowest price guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ROSS for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. So create an account and redeem code ROSS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, the Super Bowl is set. It is the Eagles and the Chiefs. I've been telling you guys about Smirnoff being an official sponsor of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast all year. So you already know that they're also an official vodka partner of the NFL and Super Bowl 59. What I love about Smirnoff is that you can get the world's #1 vodka without breaking the bank. Very important. This feeling is what the good folks over at Smirnoff call Smirnoff Extraordinary. And yes, I can say that way better than the guys in the TV commercial. They've got some awesome items right now dropping, including from Vernon Davis. You got to check it out. Head on over to SmirnoffDrops.com to check out upcoming drops and check out these Smirnoff Extraordinary items. Go quick. They won't last long. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. Smirnoff Company, New York. Pricing at sole discretion of the retailer. May vary by state. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age. The only thing better than game day predictions are the foods that come with them. Introducing Tums Fantasy Foodball Pool. Brought to you by Tums, America's #1 antacid brand, and DraftKings. Turn football into foodball by building your best game day plate for a shot at winning a share of $40,000 in cash prizes. Join the Tums foodball action during this playoff season's most heartburn-inducing time. Visit DraftKings.com/Tums foodball now through February 9th to enter for free and select your game day plate before the start of each playoff round. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at DraftKings.com/Tums foodball. Don't let heartburn keep you on the sidelines. Try Tums Chewy Bites with a tasty outer shell and soft center for fast relief of heartburn, acid indigestion, and upset stomach. Check out Tums Gummy Bites, featuring a soft and easy-to-chew format for fast relief of occasional heartburn, acid indigestion, sour stomach, and upset stomach. Both available at Amazon, Target, and other major retailers nationwide. Be sure to follow Tums at Tums Official on Instagram and TikTok.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross. So I didn't know if you know, there is a game Sunday. What are you thinking? Who do you got? Who's winning?
Yes, there's definitely a game. And my pick of the week is presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. You know, I've looked at it a lot of times, Jack. I've thought of it in a bunch of different ways. The reality is I do think it's a close game. And anytime I make my prediction on any platform, it's based on what I think is the most likely thing to happen. And I think the most likely thing to happen in a one-score game is that the Chiefs win. I mean, they have a first-ballot Hall of Fame head coach, first-ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. If they win this one, both those guys are at least going to have a conversation for being the best that have ever done it in their respective roles. I think if the Eagles win, it's like 34-23, 31-20 maybe. But ultimately, I'll go Chiefs 27, Eagles 24.
Looking forward to next year, the Rams are hosting a game in Australia, 2026.
That is really cool. That is really cool. And it sounds like it won't be against the Eagles. I forget where I read that, you know, it's a Rams home game, and they're not scheduled to play the Eagles that year, which I'm a little bit surprised by because it seemed like Jeffrey Lurie was very open to that because Australia is one of the marketing areas for the Philadelphia Eagles, and, of course, Jordan Mailata, you know, being from Australia.
A few other notes. Packers running back Josh Jacobs says the team needs a #1 wide receiver.
Not a big fan of that. You know, like, even if you feel that way, why would you say that? I don't think it's the right thing to say. How does it make his other teammates, his other receivers, all those guys that are really good players, how does that make them feel? I mean, how would they feel if he said, oh, we need to have a better running back? Also, the Jags hired Grant Yudinsky as their offensive coordinator. He's not even 30 years old yet. I mean, Jack, what are you doing with your life? This guy's an NFL offensive coordinator. Other than that, I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. You guys know it's the best Valentine's Day gift ever. Backofficeschedule.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.